welcome to the Productivity Podcast. I'm delighted again to be joined by Diane for our monthly catch-up on Footfall, and we're talking from August to September. Hi, Diane.
Hello, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. And there's been a few changes in your world since we last spoke, I think, hasn't there?
There have. I left MRI software this week, actually. So it's my first few days of independent working. So that's going to be really exciting. So I'm going to be working with a host of people, including yourselves, hopefully, supporting retail. My passion is retail and bricks and mortar retail and insights. So from the outside, probably not much will change, actually, but I won't be bound by a 9 to 5 anymore, which will be quite exciting.
Excellent. Yeah, you can work 8 till 8 now.
Absolutely. Well, I do that anyway, Simon. So
happy days. Good. So I think last time we spoke, we were in August to September. No, we weren't. We were in July to August. Now we're August to September. So September's results. Where have we headed, and how was it looking?
Well, they were pretty much what we would have expected to see in September. So every year what we see is this pattern of footfall that rises up to midsummer and then drops down in September. And that's happened every year. MRI started publishing data back in 2009, and it's an established pattern. You know, the school, everyone finishes their holiday, the schools go back, people go back to work, they rail back a little bit in anticipation of Halloween now, and also then Christmas. So we saw a drop in footfall. There was a drop in footfall of just under 3%, 2.8% from August to September, which wasn't surprising. And actually, the ONS have released the sales data today, and they're highlighting that volumes of sales have dropped from August to September with a sort of note of surprise. But of course, I wasn't surprised because I was expecting that anyway. So it wasn't particularly shocking. So I don't think we should be startled by that at all.
So a typical trend that you'd see. I'm just trying to think what the weather was like. It was unseasonably hot, wasn't it?
It was warm. Yes, it was warm. And ONS have said that was one of the reasons. It possibly was. I mean, I've looked back at the footfall data for preceding years, and the drop from August to September this year was no greater than it had been in preceding years. So yes, we did have some warm weather, and but that actually does help footfall. Sometimes people want to go out and spend money, and enjoy things. If it's not shopping, it might be a cup of coffee or for lunch. So certainly it wasn't anything distinctive in September, and that's actually very encouraging. Because if the drop had been much more severe than it had been in previous years, then it would have pointed to the economy being particularly impacted by the challenges that we're facing in terms of inflation and rising interest rates. So that should be comforting for all the retailers who are listening.
Yeah, and I think they've just announced that average weekly earnings figures July to August for this year were above inflation for the first time in 2 years. So for the economists out there, that'll probably mean more than it does to me, but everyone's telling me that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it? Because it's because inflation has been pushed down, because interest rates have gone up. So it's checks and balances. Inflation's dropping. It didn't drop. Of course, the latest results said it was static from the previous month, so sitting at 6.7%. So prices are still rising, and we have to acknowledge that, and they're rising more in food than they are in non-food. But it hasn't gone up, and of course that means that our salaries have probably seen some increases above inflation. But of course we're being hit by higher interest rates, which has driven that inflation rate down.
Yeah, and we kind of head into the golden quarter, I suppose, if we just think about retail and hospitality. So those Christmas parties, and every retailer I go in now, they've kind of, I think, almost scaled back a little bit on Halloween, but certainly there's some on the shelves. But again, all the big supermarkets, all the discounters, you're now starting to see Christmas creep in. We've got half term at the end of October. Black Fridays, I think, towards the end, 24th of November. So there's kind of lots of events now in the calendar, isn't it? And then clearly we've got Christmas and then the January sales coming. So lots of things to try and stimulate spending. I wonder if people will go early, if they'll wait for discounts, or they'll hang on for last minute discounts this year. I'm not quite sure what the buying pattern will look like.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting every year. It's always a complete unknown. I mean, I think what we've seen over the last few years is that Black Friday is in the diary, and however much people say it's a con or it's nothing special, it's an opportunity for people to start planning Christmas more easily in terms of their spending. And clearly, if you're going to buy presents for people, if you've got an opportunity to buy those at a discounted level, you're going to take that opportunity. So I think quite a lot of people use Black Friday as sort of an opportunity to go out and do some early Christmas shopping. And you're right about the Halloween Christmas balance. I've noticed it too in supermarkets. It's not nearly as big Halloween this year. And I've seen the Christmas puddings and mince pies on the shelves already, which is a little bit shocking because I don't start eating my mince pies until beginning of December. Otherwise, it's not good for the body. But yes, I think what they seem to have done is scale back on the Halloween promotions and focusing more on the Christmas to try and drive spending towards Christmas. So I think that bodes well for Christmas, but I think people will look to spread purchases and budget more carefully. And of course, Black Friday is an opportunity to do some of that in November. So it'll offer opportunities for retailers to capture the shopper early.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, I get all the things I've signed up to in my email, but I'm seeing again some retailers do things differently. So size, the kind of trainer shop, just I think yesterday, the day before, I had a blanket 20% off everything voucher to try and stimulate a sale. ASOS are kind of giving another percentage off the percentages they've already got. So I think there seems to be this trend towards more periodic discounts, like kind of little and often, and clearly they'll be targeting certain types of shoppers that have shopped regularly that haven't shopped to stimulate more. But again, people starting to think differently again, but some of that must hit margin because for some people you'll be almost auto discounting something they were going to buy anyway.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of those discounts are about getting rid of excess stock from the summer. The trainer shops, clearly, if they haven't mopped up the student spend by now, they probably feel they're not going to. So I know a number of shoe retailers who trade very heavily with amongst students, and they focus very heavily on the start of the university year term where they've all have their loans. So it may be part of trying to clear the shelves and make way for Christmas stock. And certainly people at ASOS will have sort of quite a lot of stock hanging over in the summer. It wasn't a great summer. So people probably wouldn't have bought nearly as much summer fashion as they might have done if the weather had been better. So that's probably part of getting rid of the stuff, the inventory, and clearing the way for new stock, and allowing Christmas to take precedence. It will be interesting to see whether how much beyond Black Friday, how much of their sales there will be, because a lot of retailers have railed back on ordering stock and just been a little bit more cautious around how much stock they're going to carry. So whether or not there'll be sufficient stock to have huge sales and huge discounts post-Christmas, that will be really interesting.
Yeah, it's always turkeys as well in food, isn't it? There's always a massive shortage because something's happened or a massive overage, and they're reduced dirt cheap on Christmas Eve.
Absolutely. It's the time to do your Christmas food shopping, but are you brave enough?
Yeah, I'm not quite there. I don't think I'd get shot, I think, if I left it that late and came back with something that I wasn't supposed to. But
No.
So I suppose in summary, year to date, we've had some peaks and troughs, as I think you expect in any kind of data tracking. I think the last couple of months, in terms of what you'd expect, I think the big unknown, as we say, going in is where the economy is. I also think the weather's probably got a big part to play. We're in October as we record, and we've already had 2 storms and record temperatures for the month. So it just feels a bit weird in terms of what's going to get thrown at us from an economic point of view, but also from a weather point of view, which it clearly has a massive impact.
It does. I remember last Christmas, a week before Christmas, we had rail strikes for 3 days of the week before Christmas.
Yep.
So, and of course, you tend to get this polarised spending peaks and troughs. So Black Friday's, love it or hate it, people do spend on Black Friday, and then it goes into a bit of a lull until sort of mid-December, and then it really ramps up. But of course, last year, in the week that was supposed to be the peak week, we had rail strikes, which really did destabilised things a little bit, impacted high streets. So people went to retail parks and shopping centres, and it was extremely cold. I remember I was doing an outside broadcast for BBC, and it was -9 in one Saturday morning. It was absolutely freezing. So you're right, that weather really plays part. And of course, if it's very, very cold, people will gravitate more towards covered shopping centres than they would to high streets. That's inevitable. Why would you want to be outside if you don't have to be? And of course, if it's pouring with rain, likewise. But I'm anticipating that this Christmas will be a little more subdued than last Christmas anyway, partly because of all things have gone up in cost, and people have been away this year and probably spent more on holidays than they had certainly in the previous 3 years, because a lot of people hadn't been on holiday because of COVID, and the price of holidays had gone up, and of course inflation's been very high. So I'm expecting a more subdued Christmas generally, not significant. I mean, I'm not expecting a disaster, but the people will just be much more cautious, because of course a lot of people are looking over the hill into January and seeing their fixed rate mortgages ending and coming into new arrangements or new variable rates, which will set them back a huge amount in terms of household budget each month.
Yeah, and we've not really touched on energy either, so signs are it's going to come down, and there's all sorts of kind of offers starting to come back to the table on charging your electric car overnight to get a discounted rate. I think British Gas are doing a Sunday saver rate between 11 and 5, so that hopefully will continue to ease.
Yes, absolutely. And all these little incentives and I've seen, cost of fuel come down. That makes a big difference on a household budget for a lot of people. And that's a meal out, or it's a present for a family member. So all of these things make a huge difference when you add them all up in the totality. So I think we're actually, whilst it's going to be a Christmas of caution, I don't think it's actually going to be a disastrous trading Christmas by any means. But I think people are going to be quite discerning around what they buy, and the Christmas food shop and the family get-togethers and the friends, I think, will remain. The hospitality bit will be interesting that you mentioned around Christmas parties, because of course so many people work remotely for at least part of the week now, that actually they may become quite big, or they may, for some companies, not happen at all, or be very subdued or much more local. And I know a lot of businesses are scaling back on Christmas events just because of the sheer scale of the price, when you look at it at a corporate level. So that is going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, but lots of Christmas conferences I see on LinkedIn. It's that time when, say, people are getting ready for the golden quarter. So good to see lots of familiar faces kind of at their corporate Christmas conferences, all geared up for hopefully what will be a bumper time for them.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think what we have learned through COVID is that people want to socialise, want to get together. So actually, I think hospitality is in a fairly good place, although obviously the cost of sale is higher than it has been.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, on that note, we'll pause. Let's hope the weather whereby me stops raining by the time we speak next month, because it looks like it's setting for a while. And we'll see where we get to September to October.
Lovely.
Great. Good to speak. Catch you soon.
And you, Sam. Take care.